Welcome to the Authority File, the podcast that features conversations about the life cycle of scholarly communication. I'm Bill Mickey, your host and the editorial director at Choice, a publishing division of the Association of College and Research Libraries. If I asked you to tell me what you think powers today's AI tools and LLMs, I bet your first guess would be computer science. And you'd be right, of course, but another discipline that's not typically thought of is mathematics. Math has played a huge role in the development of AI and still does. In this four-part series, generously underwritten by Springer Nature, I'm joined by two guests who will guide us through the mathematical foundations of and research connections with AI, and how the technology is intersecting with teaching, learning, and publishing. With me on the program are Elizabeth Loew, Executive Editor of Mathematics, and Christopher Tominich, Senior Editor of Mathematics, both from Springer Nature. In this third episode of our series, we shift the discussion to talk about how AI is impacting the teaching and learning of mathematics, including how instructors and librarians are positioned to help math students navigate AI's limitations and benefits. So one of the things, our listenership is made up primarily of academic librarians, and AI literacy right now is a huge initiative, and that is basically helping students, teaching faculty, researchers really understand how to use AI tools properly. Um, and I'm wondering from both of your perspectives, now that AI tools are fairly widely available to students, how is this changing sort of what undergraduate math students need to learn? I mean, are there skills that matter now more than they did even 5 or 10 years ago?
Yeah, this is a nice question. Thanks. So put it in a very broad sense.
Hmm.
From my view and those that I've spoken to, students will really need to understand the material. Okay,
Yeah.
they're going to have to develop their mathematical intuition and integrate that intuition with computational thinking. And to clarify that, what I mean is, if we take out that arduous task of having to learn how to compute everything, you're taking that out, okay, as a focal point, students will probably naturally strengthen their conceptual skills, understanding things more deeply, while also sort of having to think about the operations, like how to test, how to explore ideas, how to implement algorithms, if that's required as well.
Hmm.
One responder I'm remembering to a survey explicitly indicated that they thought students will learn faster than ever. And they do need training in this direction so that they use AI both ethically
Hmm.
and effectively. And from a publishing viewpoint, the change that will take place in undergraduate studies, it has less to do with rethinking the content. That part you don't have to do, and more about changing the coursework, how the lectures look, how the textbooks look, because it will have to address a new balance of skills and critical thinking that students would need to master.
Yeah, no, you had mentioned that the computational part of it
Yeah.
has been pulled out. Is that because the AI is doing it for them? Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. AI can make many types of computations,
Hmm.
and I think I mentioned earlier, or both we can it handles mega data sets in fractional amounts of time. So if you're a student and you're working in econometrics, right, and you've got a map model, a certain economic model, and
Hmm.
you've got massive amounts of data that has to be pulled from. Okay, let the AI do that part. Of course, there has to be verification, all that, but you have to know why. The
Right.
student has to know why. What does all of that mean? And just a couple of probably librarians know what a derivative is.
Hmm.
Okay, fairly simple to compute or calculate what a derivative is. But does the student know what it means? Or are they calculating these derivatives by rote? Also, Chris mentioned linear algebra.
Mm-hmm.
You have these matrices in linear algebra that need to be multiplied for many reasons. One, you have to know what those elements in the matrix mean,
Yep.
why you're multiplying it, what does the output look like, what does it all mean? And that's what I think the undergraduate student is really going to capitalize on in the AI world. Yeah.
Okay. Excellent.
If I could just add something quickly.
Of
So,
course.
I mean, when you're an undergraduate math major, yes, there is, you're learning how to compute things. The more important role, the more important goal for a lot of programs is that you need to learn how to think mathematically. It's not important that it's not as important, I'm sorry, that like Elizabeth was saying, how to calculate a derivative. It's more important that you know what it is, what you're doing, why it works, what is the theory that explains it. And then, the mathematicians, they like to write proofs, to show those things. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's one area that AI can't replace learning for students. Yes, you can ask with AI, how do I solve this problem? And it can do that. But if you ask it, oh, show me how to prove this theorem, it can give you an answer, but you're then not, taking the time to, sit down for an hour or to struggle through, thinking it through, the logic behind why something, is what it is. That can't be replaced by
Mm-hmm.
a machine. So I think, there is parts of the math curriculum that are safe, for lack of a better word, from AI.
Right. Irreplaceable. Yeah.
Irreplaceable,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. Excellent. And then likewise, at the graduate level, I imagine it's a similar situation, but here we're looking at you know students and are much closer to sort of the research portion of their careers, or even careers after school. Is there more emphasis on how sort of once they've graduated, how they might be interacting with AI at a professional level?
Yeah, definitely. So, not just recently, but in recent years, probably 20 years, there has been a shift already due to interests in
Hmm.
job and career demands. So, math departments had already been adding more interdisciplinary, more applied programs. Okay. They've
Yeah.
added separate degrees for students that integrate mathematical foundations with the real world, like degrees in industrial mathematics. And then specifically, as a result of leaps in AI development, so now fast forward, there are emerging AI infused degrees because the prediction is sure, a lot of your math students are going to be going into AI related fields, or fields that use AI very deeply.
Mhm.
So, at the PhD level, you'd have, PhDs in data science, probabilistic modeling, machine learning, PhD in optimization. So these departments are training budding mathematicians to design an AI more so than ever, starting with mathematical concepts and foundations, and then they can branch out like crazy, in various directions. And as one would expect, these degrees are offered in collaboration with other departments, often like computer science. That would make sense. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. In addition to what Elizabeth was saying, we're also seeing universities that are creating new schools that are devoted to these topics. Just a good example. So NYU, has had the Quran Institute for Mathematical Sciences for decades. It's one of the best, math research centers in the world. Just this year, they announced that they're renaming themselves the Quran Institute School of Mathematics, Computing, and Data Science.
Hmm.
So, it's NYU obviously is a very prestigious university, so for them to rename a center that's had such a long history, I think really speaks to how important they think investing in education of graduate students in these areas, how important that is.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I think we've talked a little bit about this, but AI obviously can generate answers that look really convincing without being correct. How can or do mathematicians navigate that tension between AI's speed and then math's demand for rigor?
Yeah, I guess I would have a very cursory, not too deep answer for this, but I'll give it. So this is a central challenge,
Mm,
absolutely, and it requires a balance between exploring and verifying. Okay,
right,
so we said AI is the accelerant, but it surely makes mistakes, and quite frankly, I would imagine that mathematicians and, as I said earlier, graduate students are relieved to know that their verification processes are increasingly needed, okay,
right.
in this direction. So I learned an example with Lean, that assistant that uses some AI guidance for proofing and proof verification, where an incorrect proof, generated because Lean wanted to make life easier for itself, okay, and it manipulated a lemma that was used in formulating the proof. So of course, you know, um, that proof had faults,
Mhm,
okay, that it spit out. We could say, I guess, that AI generated mathematics is treated as a rough draft, okay, and is then checked humans by humans, layer by layer. The premises, each use of a theorem, a lemma, a definition, any hidden assumptions, and so on. So AI is the speed generator, as you
mhm,
said,
right.
right? And I believe some aspects of rigor have been introduced into the AI assistants. So AI enforces rigor to some extent, but then the human needs to take over to add that extra layer of rigor.
Hmm. Yeah,
And that's how I see it working.
yeah. We've heard that called the human in the loop. Um, and
Okay. I
kind of
have
a
to write that down.
necessary component of all of this. Like, yeah. Okay, so given the rapid increase in the number and promotion of AI services, many people are likely unaware that all of the limitations of AI and how to balance these with the benefits. Instructors and librarians are well positioned to guide students in the context of mathematics education. How do you think instructors and librarians can do this?
Well, I mean, we've both said this several times already in our conversation, but I think the main emphasis needs to be, that AI is a tool that can assist you with learning and it can assist with research, but it can't be a substitute for
Right.
either. And, especially in a mathematics education, like, again, as I said before, like, you really need to develop a ability to think mathematically, and AI is not, going to be able to do that for you. So I think as long as that message is clear, and they should encourage students to engage with AI and to try experiment, try it out, with keeping in the back of their mind, this is not supposed to substitute for what I'm learning.
Yeah, that's something that always bears repeating. I would think. You just heard from Elizabeth Loew, Executive Editor of Mathematics, and Christopher Tominich, Senior Editor of Mathematics, both from Springer Nature. Join us next week when we look at how AI is impacting mathematical research workflows. We also have a thoughtful discussion around whether AI, in the context of teaching and learning mathematics, is comparable to the introduction of the calculator. The Authority File podcast is brought to you every week by Choice and produced and edited by digital media producer Sabrina Kofer. Underwriting opportunities are directed by Melissa Carr and Ryan King. For more information about underwriting opportunities, download the Choice Media Kit at choice360.org. That's all for this week. Thanks for joining us.